Okay, so I'm calling the Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Erie Environmental Advisory Council to order. Roll call, John Campbell. Here. Bob Howden.
Here.
Aaron Kerr, he's, I guess he's excused.
Do you want to explain to the group?
Sure. Aaron has notified me that he's now teaching this semester, and he is, what I gather from his email, he will not be able to attend from January till March any of the EAC meetings. That being said, I tried to confirm that with him. I did not receive a response yet, so I can reach out again if that is the case. I'm not sure how the board would like to handle that. I don't think there's a possibility of him virtually zooming in since he's teaching. It's not a matter of that. But yeah, he would be absent for 3 months.
Okay, but he would just 3 months.
3 months, yes.
Okay, so why don't we
Continue with the roll.
put it on, talk about it when we bring the associate members on. Okay, Pat, Sister Pat, Dr. Mason, Matt, and I'm here. Okay, and so should we do this now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we have now 2 associate members. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Jenna Walmsley. I'm 27, a sophomore at Gannon, studying environmental sciences with a minor in philosophy.
Oh,
Yeah, I think so.
Jenna.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm Molly Tarvin. I am the Sustainability Coordinator at Mercyhurst University. I've been there about 3 years. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so we've already officially made them members, right? Associate members, we already voted on them?
Yes.
So, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay,
I will add them to the roll call list for next agenda.
okay. So now we have the election of officers. So we'll start with the nominations for chair. I would like to nominate Matt Puz for chair.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations?
Do you want to
Do we
continue?
have, he must continue. He must continue.
I nominate myself for secretary.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, we do, yeah.
I second that.
I was thinking, in case anybody tried.
You didn't vote. You didn't take
No, I
it.
haven't.
I'm sorry.
Can
Vote
we?
on both.
So we
you
have.
I thought we were doing all
Can we
nominations.
go in
Sorry.
order, please?
Yes.
So, can we, do we have to make a motion to close nominations? Can we have a motion to close nominations?
Is this nominations just for
Yes,
president? Okay.
we're doing one at a time.
Okay, I'll
I
make a
think
motion to
you'll
close
unique.
nominations.
Okay, so.
Second.
Make a motion to declare
Second.
not unanimously, or, well, let's, all right, how many want to vote for Matt Puz for chair?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Oh, no, I asked him. I asked his permission. Okay, so Matt Puz is the new chair. Do you want to take it over from here?
I can do that.
Do you want to sit here, or do you?
Oh, this is fine. I'll sit with the
Okay.
common folk. No. Well, thank you for electing me the chair. I appreciate the nomination and the support. I guess we'll move on to vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Were you vice chair?
I was vice chair.
I'll self-nominate for vice chair.
I'll second that.
All right. Any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, let's have the vote for vice chair for Sam. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So be it. Sam is our vice chair. Then we'll move to secretary. Do I have any nominations for secretary?
I nominate John Mike Campbell.
All right.
I second that
Second.
nomination.
Sounds good. Any other nominations for secretary? Seeing none, we'll close nominations. We'll call the vote for Bob to be Michael, I'm sorry, to be the secretary. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. All right. I did notice in the bylaws we're supposed to approve the agendas. Are there any additional agenda comments on the agenda before we approve the agenda before we move forward?
I had a question. Well, actually, I don't know if it's on the agenda. Are the bylaws on the agenda? I know they were in your,
Yes.
Oh, they are?
Yes, under
Okay.
new business item B.
okay, because
Oh, okay.
it says that we won't amend the bylaws unless any such proposed amendment has been included or enclosed with a notice of meeting. So I just wanted to mention that.
So if there are any amendments at that time, then that will be the notice, and then we can make the amendments next
So-
meeting.
So we might be discussing amendments today, but not voting. on
Yeah, if it's deemed necessary to amend the bylaws, yes. All right, any other comments on the agenda? Have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. All right, next we'll move on to the approval of the December 2024 meeting minutes. Any comments on the meeting minutes before we approve them? Seeing none, anyone make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
Motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Moving on to public comment. You see we have some people in the audience. Is there any public comment from the public today? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Next, we'll move on to item 5, old business. A, priority 1, the LCAP priorities, meetings with various government groups. Looks like Aaron Kerr's report from the Erie Sewer Authority meeting was, I believe, included in the packet. Do we have any discussion on this matter?
I just had a question, because he said,
Can't hear you.
one place he mentioned sewer authority, and then he mentioned water authority. So, right, agenda item number 7. Okay, so on the sewer authority agenda, they talked about the water authority, is that? I guess we don't,
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm unable to answer that. I was not at the
Right.
meeting.
okay, no.
Yeah.
By the way, I wanted to, when it comes to new business, I just wanted to add an item. I forgot to.
Yeah.
When we get to new business, I would want to add an item. I'm sorry I didn't mention it when we approved the agenda.
Okay.
I have a question with this, the LCAP priorities meetings. These are meetings with various government groups to just talk about the LCAP
Yeah,
plan?
I believe
What was
Us.
Or was it to talk about us? That's what I
Us.
thought. Okay, yeah, I understand that heading, okay.
Can I make a comment? Reading that agenda item number 7, that had to be a typo because I don't think Ebenezer SADA
Yeah.
testing incinerators would have been hired by
The water authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was confused.
I assumed it was a typo when I read it, but we can clarify that with Aaron.
Not a big deal, it's just I noticed it. It was very interesting, though, reading this stuff about the landfills.
Yeah, I was kind of excited when I saw that there has to be something done about the incinerator too, because that would be the key step to do something different with the final solids that they're left with that could allow them to set up a methane producing thing. You know, if they have to do something about the incinerator, they could generate methane and electricity there with the solids instead of burning them. So
That's not a burning process?
they're currently burning. They incinerate all of the final dried solids
Right, but I
that
mean,
they produce. But
to generate energy, it's not a very,
no, they'd set up a methane digester system that would collect the methane, and then the methane could be used to generate electricity to help offset their power usage, which is, there's sewage treatment facilities all over the country already do that.
I would be happy to also touch base with Basil, if you'd like to have him come and speak at one of the EAC meetings. I have toured with him the plant. It's incredible, the production that they have there. So if that's of interest, you can let me know. I can reach back out to you when we're setting the agenda for next month.
yeah, that'd be, I think it's especially interesting since they're finding that they can't, the agricultural use of the sewage sludge isn't working anymore because of the plastics in the,
And other chemicals.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of PFAS and all sorts of personal care products that are remaining in the solids, so, yeah.
I think especially since Aaron's not going to be with us, maybe we can run with the ball that he's handed off to us with this.
Is there anything in particular that you'd like me to ask him to present on, as what are some of the other options that they're exploring currently with the incinerator and other,
Yeah.
what are they
I guess,
called?
like, what's the process, and how can we be a part of that process for the consideration of other options?
Okay.
Well, I'm curious, the statement about the landfill being unable to take solid waste, is that a space issue or a constituent in the materials?
I think the solid waste that they haul to the landfill is the ash, and I would expect there's issues with metals contamination of the ash. That's
Okay.
probably
It'd
the
be
concern
interesting
at the
to know.
landfill.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what that's about.
Yeah, I've had the tour myself, so it's,
I would assume that even with a biodigester, that would still be there's still going to be waste.
yeah, I don't know
So that
about
would be,
right.
yeah, we would need to,
I know there's microbes that eat metals.
You haven't done the tour until you've done it with 20 kids.
I've done the tour. It's the best. All right.
Does that answer your question, Jackie, then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Any further comments on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll move to item B, secondary priorities, the single-use plastics and litter mitigation. I believe that Sam had sent over the plastic bag ban ordinance.
Yeah, so, I mean, I knew that other communities have done this. For a while, there was a moratorium on creating bag bans, but that's during COVID, but that's been lifted. And so Penn Environment has kind of renewed this interest. So I just was curious if this group was interested in this idea. Like, I didn't want to spend time working on crafting an ordinance for us to look at if everyone's like, no, we do not want to propose an ordinance. I know all we can do is make the recommendation to City Hall or to City Council, and then City Council would have to vote. I would assume that to make that recommendation to City Council, this group would like to see what such an ordinance would look like. Before crafting such an ordinance, I wanted to make sure that it was of interest to this group.
The city council would probably want to have a study session on it. That's
How
often,
that works.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, things like this, I think there's going to be enough public interest. And
Mm-hmm.
does the planning commission have to, yes,
Oh, for an ordinance?
yeah. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
I don't know the answer to that. Because it doesn't relate to the zoning ordinance or the saldo, I don't know if it has to go through planning commission.
Technically, it would not. That does not mean that the governing body, city council, couldn't send it to the planning commission for the recommendation.
And
know-
I actually would recommend that.
When we had the weed, you know, the native plant, which became the weed definition, that did go through the planning commission.
But I think it's definitely something that I would like to see this group, you know, begin to do.
Can we address styrofoam at the same time?
Yeah, I was going to suggest, so I asked Jackie to pull up the map. So they, Penn Environment, when they sent out their email, you know, made a point that, you know, there's now, I forget how many, 35 local plastic bag bans statewide, covering close to 20% of the state's population. But if you notice, there seems to be a preponderance in a certain area of the state, which is not a surprise because that's also the most populated area. But yeah, there's definitely a lacking in our area of the state. But if you scroll down a little bit on that page, there you go. So the very first one there, the very first borough that's up there is, what is it, Narberth or something?
Yeah.
And they amended their original ban that came out in 2018. They amended it in 2023, and it also includes a ban on expanded foam polystyrene to-go containers. It includes straws. Plastic straws are given out only on request, and there's also a fee for plastic utensils, so that plastic utensils aren't just given out for free when you go to get like takeout. So that was the one, honestly, that interested me the most, because y'all know my passion, so I don't need to explain. But if that's something that y'all are, that as a group there's an interest in, I'm happy to, before our next meeting, reach out and get a copy of their ordinance and share it with you all for us to have a discussion about. I would assume that the process would be that we would have a discussion and then we would make a recommendation to the city council, and then the city council would have their study session.
Yes.
That's what I assume the process would be.
But they would want to have.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that's what I'm suggesting that we could do under this to start working towards this second priority of ours. But again, wanted to make sure there was interest from this group before I spin my wheels.
So one of the things that might be interesting to explore is there's a various purchasing cooperative things, and I know one of the ones that I looked at does address takeout containers. So, I mean, we don't want to get into the business of buying them, but if there's some way that we can make it more cost-effective for the entities to procure them.
That would kind of be a separate initiative, though. This initiative would just be on the ban, and then, you know, if somebody wanted to look into, well, what are some things that are replacements that could be used, that would be another thing.
Well, I was just thinking if there are likely to be objections from the user group, and if we can help them to come up with options.
Yeah, there are lots of options out there, and lots of local places are already using
Right.
options.
Yeah.
Just another comment in terms of the process of approval and buy-in and that type of thing. It might, and we can talk about this a little bit further in terms of how you might approach it, but, you know, you do have a liaison to the city council. So even before you go into a study session, which, yes, council does like those, and then it allows the public to have more transparency with the topic, but you may want to, we may want to bring in our liaison and even another person from council to discuss that ordinance at the next agenda meeting and be present and be here to ask questions or just to listen, so that you have a little bit more support when you go into the study session. So I could also ask a planning commissioner to come on, and we can always request support letters. Even if we don't have to formally go through that process, we can build support around this. So just a little bit, I'm learning.
Do we know who the new council liaison is, or is it still Jasmine?
It just changed. I don't know if it's still Jasmine, so I have to find that out. I don't know who it is, unless they may be taking vote today. No, I think it did change, right, Mayor?
I don't know that they
No.
vote. Doesn't the president just do it?
I know that, yeah, I'm not sure who it is, but we'll find that out, and we can invite them for the next meeting to be present.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. So I heard one person say that they were open to this idea. How does including our new associate members, how do y'all feel?
Just so I'm clear on this, so what it
Yeah.
would do is ban the single-use plastic bags at like restaurants, stores.
So
Kind
how you define it, so generally speaking, they tend to be the larger plastic bags that normally people would use for groceries, which a lot of our grocery stores at this point aren't including anyway. So they usually don't include the smaller bags that people use for their fruits and vegetables.
Okay.
Much to my chagrin, but nevertheless. So it's see, there's a definition of what we mean by a plastic bag in the ordinance. And so you have, length and width and depth and even width of material. So some cities have gotten, in some cities where plastic bag bans have been put into effect, some stores have gotten around them by using bags that are thicker or thinner than what is in the ordinance. I mean, so I think that that's something for us to think about, is how we're going to go about defining it and trying to avoid those loopholes. But it is a ban specifically on like those takeout with the handles kind of plastic bags. Yes.
But I like also including, what you said with the straws and the silverware. I mean,
Yeah.
even when like I'll go through takeout and I'll say, I don't want any spoons or forks, and then they're in the bag when you get home anyways. It's like,
Whenever I go to a restaurant, I say, with the water, I say no ice, no straw.
oh yeah, I do too, but sometimes the water's already on the table with a straw in it. So it's going to take some education of the restaurants also, but,
How would that impact events like Rib Fest and Celebrate Erie and vendors that are participating in those events?
Yeah, I mean, these are all things that would be part of the ordinance. Like, do you have
Yeah.
exceptions for certain parameters? And this is, I think, where you get into, if we're banning polystyrene containers, which I imagine is probably the dominant kind of takeout container at something like a Rib Fest. That's where you would get into making, as we've talked about, like a requirement for events that, do we exclude events? Do we say at events you should be part of this conglomeration in order to get these at those are all kind of pieces to the ordinance that have to be kind of flushed out, I guess.
Are you in communication with some of these other jurisdictions to know how they're, everybody's got events.
Yeah.
So I wonder how they're handling events.
I'm fairly new to Pennsylvania, and so no, I'm in touch with Penn Environment.
So then maybe they know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I could certainly get in touch with, and I think that's also part of the study session, but I think these are points that can be raised in a discussion around this and things that, can be discussed in order to make it.
I can just see that as being an issue with council or others that, what if, or what about, So I
Yeah.
think those are all
I
things
think-
that we need to think about.
Having timelines so that if you're passing an ordinance, there's enough of a timeline for people to make preparations for that, I think is also kind of key on that. or charging, like, well, you can have them, but you have to charge for them. And charging for something is always better than giving a rebate. Like, this has been shown in statistics. So the fact that I can go to Starbucks and get 10 cents off by bringing my reusable mug is less effective than if I go to Starbucks and they charge me 10 cents for a disposable cup.
Right.
And so, you know, it could be that we say, well, you can use them, but you have to charge your customers this amount of money. And that money goes into some type of an environment fee. And then those monies are usually used for supporting environmental projects of the community. So putting in more trash cans or paying people to empty the trash cans. You know, I mean, that there are different kind of ways that that money can be used. Yeah.
You know, it might be advantageous if we're going to look into this, to maybe reach out to like surrounding municipalities to kind of maybe look into it as well. I mean, the bulk of the retail in the area is not really in the city, you know what I mean? It's outside the city, so while it's us doing our part, just like from the map of Philadelphia, in the surrounding counties, it looks like that was almost like a joint municipal, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Well, it's happened municipality by municipality, and this was an argument, and I can tell you in Ohio, one of the councils were worried that people were going to drive across like some borders in order to go grocery shopping, though I can also tell you that's been shown that people won't do that. I mean, people will postulate that people are going to do that, but they won't actually do that, you know, and so it becomes an argument, but it's not a valid
well,
one.
what I'm trying to say more is that even if the city bans it, there's the other surrounding municipalities are still going to have the same level of usage regardless. So, and they probably may have a more intensive usage of the bags as opposed to, you know,
Well,
the
where are
city.
the grocery stores, actually?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I can only think of maybe 2, 3 in this city.
Well, I don't know, is this something
That's-
that the Council of Governments addresses, things like this? Do you know how they function?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, not all of the municipalities are actually part of the COG, but you could definitely, I think what Matt is trying to say is it's a regional, it could be considered, I mean, it would take a lot of political will, of course, but it could be, it could morph into a regional approach. I do like the idea of talking even with Mill Creek. In fact, we're meeting on Friday, and we're meeting with the planning director too on Friday, and you know, working more collaboratively with our surrounding municipalities makes a lot of sense. However, at this moment, because we're just exploring just the ordinance at the moment and what the options are, I think that's a conversation that needs to come for, you know, a little bit later on, and focusing on what is going to work only in the city of Erie at the moment just happens to seem like easier plan to tackle. But I do think, Matt, what you said, I like the idea of, you know, or even working through the COG to say that, look, this city is taking on this initiative. Would you be supportive? Would you reach out to other municipalities to gain support? Are they interested? We have draft ordinances. We have examples. Maybe we have some funding available for something. You know, who knows what incentives we could bring around that. But I think that's a good approach, that we don't oftentimes broaden our scope with certain things, and I like that.
Is it feasible to, while we're talking about this, to also bring in the plastic water bottles? Or is that go?
Sure. I mean, I haven't seen any ban on. I've seen the National Park Service, specifically in the Grand Canyon, bans disposable plastic water bottles within that park. so I've seen things like that. I haven't seen cities that have tried to ban disposable water bottles just because that's you. I think you're going to get a lot of pushback. People are going to say it is my right to go to a grocery store and buy bottled water if that is what
But
I want to do.
maybe the events is still, trying to get it on the
That's a
events.
separate.
I think the zoo has banned straws.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just, you know that I'm in line with your
right.
thinking
Yeah, I
on
know
this,
that.
Freda. I just,
No,
I
that's what
think
I'm
that like
asking.
you keep making it
Yeah, you
bigger,
can,
and
yeah.
I think we need to start small if we want to pass anything, as opposed to thinking about all the permutations or all the ways that we can grow this bigger. I can't take on. I'm happy to bring an ordinance that focuses on this one thing to the community and or to the committee here, the council.
That's great.
And work on that. And I'm just wondering if there's support for that. And then we can always look to expand it and make it bigger, both in terms of scope of who's involved and scope of what's under it.
Yeah, and the water bottles could be a different way to make that happen.
Yeah. I think the better way to make that happen is through having availability of, and I just submitted another foundation grant to, letter of a request to get money for a water buggy, another one. So I'm constantly looking on that. That's separate from this. So
I think the plastic bag ordinance to start would be really effective, and it would be a solid route in expanding. And I think it already has such a nice start because of places like Aldi and Giant Eagle that don't have plastic bags already. So I feel like accomplishing that feels more within reach, just to get Target and Walmart on board, and then you can really take it off. So I support you.
thank you. Yeah.
The food co-op doesn't have it either.
And the co-op, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Do we need a motion to empower
Howard?
Sherry to move forward with this?
Didn't we
Because she's
make
got a
her
lot
the-
of other things to
I
do
thought we made her
too.
the litter queen last time.
Well, I mean specifically for her to look more closely at
I
ordinances
move
as
that
well.
we have, through our co-chair, that we explore a plastic bag ordinance.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Awesome.
Okay, maybe before we move on, maybe Sherry can tell us the good news about Ripples of Plastic.
Yeah, on December 20th, a project that I've been working on for about a year, we finally got notification from Erie Insurance that they are going to support a screening of a new documentary called Ripples of Plastic, which is the only documentary that I'm aware of that is specifically focused on Lake Erie plastic pollution. I think it's the only one that's at Great Lakes even, but it's specifically targeted at Lake Erie plastic pollution. In the interest of being transparent, I am in it quite prominently. But we'll be screening it, so with Erie Insurance support, we'll be screening it at the Warner Theater on Thursday, March 20th. Doors will open to the general public at 4:45. It is free, open to the public, and and we chose that date because it's consistent with World Water Day, which is on Saturday, March 22nd. So this whole water theme.
Do you have a flyer for that yet?
Not yet. I'm working on it.
Okay, when you
Yeah.
do, just share it, and
Yeah.
I'd love to
So the
circulate
movie
that around
actually starts
to
at
this
5?
board.
The movie will actually start at 5:15 because the movie is 45 minutes long, and so it'll go 5:15 to 6, and then we'll have a Q&A with me and at least the director of the film, Chris Langer, is definitely going to be in town, and we're looking to see if Jill Bartolotta can join us. The three of us have been going on a little tour, so tomorrow we'll be in Cleveland, and then we'll all be in Alpena, Michigan on Friday. And we've already done a screening at another place in Ohio whose name I forget. But we'll see if Jill can join us as well. So we're going to do a Q&A from 6 to 7, and then we're going to usher everybody out of the Warner Theater at 7. But I'm looking for a secondary location where people can buy drinks and talk to us more, because I love me some plastic.
Kudos, that's what I want to say.
So anyway, thank you for asking me to share with that.
You could have a, what is it, benevolent beers?
Yeah, I wanted to do it at the bunker, but they're redoing their bunker behind Lavery's. Lavery's is my favorite, but they're doing renovations on the bunker, so I'm looking at other alternative locations. But yeah, something like benevolent beers. But y'all will be on your own for buying your beers at that point.
Oh, your insurance is not going to pick up the
They're
tab?
not picking up that tab. All right. That was an add-on to new business. I apologize, but thank you for inviting me to talk about that, Sister Pat.
It sounds good. I guess we'll move on to the next item.
So we had new business?
We are.
Unless there's other comments on old business.
So I just wanted to add a small item before our guest speaker, is since we do need a nonprofit for the P4P, the next stage, that we ought to publicize that as an opportunity. That, don't we need to have a nonprofit who's going to,
We need a nonprofit, and we also need a supporting organization.
right, so, you know, I think we should do some outreach on that to see what organization, qualified nonprofit would be interested in working on it.
You mean like posted online, or do you mean I do some outreach on it?
Excuse me?
Do you mean post it online, or do you mean that I do some outreach and meet with different organizations that may
Well, at least the
be
former,
relatable?
at least the former, I mean, we could announce it at city council or what, but just to say, you know, just so there's an opportunity to see who's out there that might want to work on it.
I have never seen anything like that done at the city council level. You know, haven't been involved in that many grants that require these types of partnerships. We've had to do that with some of our neighborhood resource grants, but typically I think it's more of an internal process that takes place, and really at the discretion of the city to move that forward. So while I understand you're, offering us to be more transparent, I think at this part of the process that we're in with this grant, and that we've already gone through one phase of it, we have, I think we have a little bit more competitive edge with it. We just need to find, a better partner, I think, or better fit than Cafe. I mean, Cafe is just the nonprofit that handles the events for, it doesn't make sense to go with Cafe again. We need a partner that's supportive and also in line with the same missions that we're trying to accomplish. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with
Well,
that.
I'm hoping for more transparency and
Well, I think certainly you could make a recommendation. I mean, if you have somebody in mind, I'm sure you could send the recommendation to the city, and they
Right.
would consider it with all
We-
your other ones, right?
Absolutely. We haven't made any decisions on a partner yet, and in fact, there was a webinar today at 3 for the grant that I was not able to attend, but Sarah Peelman is attending that today. We haven't made any decisions, and we're open to that, but ultimately, we have to move forward and make these partnerships happen internally so that we can apply for the grant and get the money to create the LCAP. The partner, how I think I understand it, I mean, even though you have a nonprofit partner, the city is still the one administering the grant. So you will be very involved anyways, meaning EAC, in that process once we receive the funding. And the city would be the one leading that grant. Does that help, Freda?
yeah, well, I suggested MCIC. I don't know whether your organization would be interested.
Mine?
Yeah.
I don't think we're exactly the best fit.
Sure, we can explore some of that with MCIC and think through that a little bit. Who would be the contact? Is it Gary Horton at MCIC? No,
James Sherrod, I think, is the current.
James is?
Yeah,
Oh,
is the current
okay.
president. Oh, I'm forgetting his name right now, is more attentive to emails. I can give you.
Okay,
I'll email you.
yeah.
Gary is very unattentive to emails.
Yes.
Nice guy,
Yeah.
but don't
I
try
think we
and email.
talked about that
Yeah.
last time, right, okay.
Yeah.
Great. I guess with that, thank you, Freda. We'll move on to new business. Oh gosh, Eric Iwaneko
Yep.
with the City of Erie Stormwater Best Management Practices. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
You're welcome, you're welcome. So I know in there it says best management practices. Jackie and I were talking a little bit, and I really want to just give the background of our MS4 program and some requirements we have through the DEP. I think that'll be a better scope. And then if you have any questions on BMPs, I'd be happy to answer them. So okay, that's good, Jackie, thank you. All right, so this introduction to the City of Erie's MS4 program. So what is an MS4? An MS4 is a municipal separate storm sewer system. The purpose is to have sanitary and storm sewers separate. We don't want them to intertwine. The city currently has 4 CSOs. We used to have hundreds. So we're definitely progressing in that. City of Erie is classified under a mid-size MS4, and we act under an NPDES or NEPDES permit, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, under the DEP. So under this NEPDES permit, we have a lot of requirements. I just want to go over 4 main ones with you today. So we have to develop a stormwater management program. We have to follow 6 minimum control measures.
Could you, when you, just go over what level, like DEP state and
So DEP,
NPDES is a federal, right?
DEP state, and then EPA is federal. So
Right.
there's different NEPDES permits throughout the state. The city has 2, so we have a NEPDES permit for sanitary and a NEPDES permit for storm. I'm just going over the storm today. And then Basil, wastewater, has a NEPDES for sanitary. But we have these requirements under the NEPDES permit through the DEP. And I'll get into depth, but so we have the 6 minimum control measures. We have a pollution reduction plan that we have to implement. And we have to monitor our waterways, and we have to have program evaluations through the DEP.
And Act 167 is a state regulation?
So Act 167, which I'll get into, Act 167 is a stormwater ordinance that we have. So I'll get into all that, though. So just to go over our stormwater management program, so we have a few goals, and this is all under Act 167, stormwater ordinance. It's a requirement through the DEP. So this is what the city follows. The 3 main objectives of Act 167 is to manage volume, manage rate, and manage water quality. So when developments come into play in the city of Erie and there's a new impervious area, these 3 parameters have to be met. So managing volume, we want as little stormwater going into the city system as possible. So we definitely enforce and recommend infiltration. That helps with volume. Manage rate. We want the water, the rate of the stormwater to enter our system as slow as possible. If it goes too fast, we have surcharges and flooding. We have erosion in our streams. We have infrastructure degradation. So managing rate, that's detention and retention systems in the city, as you can see in the picture. I have a lot of pictures, but this is just a nice picture to show you the overview. It's an underground system. In urbanized areas, this is what most of the systems look like. So a lot of it's not visual to residents and people that aren't really aware of what BMPs and SCMs are. So when you go around the city and you look in parking lots and see a lot of grates, if it's a new development, they have this underground. So that's a main requirement that we enforce under Act 167. And then lastly, we utilize the DEP's SCM and BMP manual. SCM is stormwater control measures. That's the new term. It used to be called BMPs, which is best management practices. They changed that this last couple of years. But everyone, all the developers have to use this manual to make sure that all the BMPs and SCMs are up to date and compliant. One of our next requirements is our minimum control measures. So we have 6 that we have to meet every year, and we have an annual report that we have to submit to the DEP. First one's public education and outreach. So this is a good example of educating. People can go on and watch and figure out what we have in store here. Public participation and involvement. I can get your feedback, change the plan if you have any good recommendations. Another good recommendation is, I know a few of you went last year. We had the BMP walk. We could do another one this year and show everybody what BMPs and SCMs are, give them a nice background in them. Illicit discharge detection and elimination. This is a very important one. I'm going to get into this in the next slide. Construction site stormwater control. When there's developments in the city, we don't only require them to manage the stormwater, but we also the stormwater after the fact. We also require them to manage the stormwater when they're developing. So when you have ground disturbed, you have a lot of loose soil. So without ENS, which is erosion and sediment control, all that sediment is pollution and goes into the storm sewer. So we make sure that they're implementing ENS. Post-construction stormwater management, so that's after the fact. So we actually have a dedicated stormwater inspector, and he goes out and he inspects these BMPs that were installed. A lot of owners aren't aware that they have BMPs in place, because back in the day they kind of just installed them, they never maintained them. So his main role is to go out, talk to the owners, and make sure that they're upholding their O&M. So everyone actually has an operation and maintenance agreement with the city, but you have to educate them on how to maintain those systems. So that's very important. And then the last one, pollution prevention and good housekeeping for the city. We want to make sure we're not polluting, and we also want to make sure that our infrastructure is in good shape. So we do a lot of inspections with infrastructure as well. Okay, so to touch on illicit discharge, this is a really important one. There's a lot of illicit discharge throughout the city. It's very unfortunate. A lot of people just aren't educated in this, so getting the public aware is really important. And illicit discharge is any non-stormwater pollution that enters the storm system. So it could be chemicals, oils, it could be anything, sediment. Plastic, it's a good one. So if anyone sees this happening, it's really important to report it. I know Freda has reported it a few times in the past and helped me out. So getting the public involved in telling us when there's illicit discharge going on is extremely important. And there's many ways to report it. You can call City of Erie Engineering. We also just came out with a new reporting platform. So we have CRCs, which Citizens Complaint. But we also now have an illicit discharge reporting form online. So if you just type in illicit discharge, City of Erie, you can fill out a whole form, and that would help. It's live, so it goes right to my phone. I can go right out in the public and figure it out. So that's an important one. Next one. Good housekeeping. So infrastructure is huge. We have a lot of systems that are over 100 years old. So we're constantly out there checking the systems, we're cameraing them. We walk through a lot of the systems. People don't believe how big a lot of them are. Mill Creek, you could drive a truck through. It's pretty amazing. So making sure that we're coding them, making sure that if we have to replace or reline, those are really key points. Head walls, a lot of the systems that were put in back in the day, they don't really have a head wall, so we want to make sure that we can put in different structures that just helps the integrity of our systems. Pollution reduction plans. So this is a big one. Every 5 years, it's a requirement as an MS4 to have a 10% sediment reduction plan. So this 5-year span, we have to reduce 536,000 pounds per year of sediment. So that's a pretty big number. In our PRP, the main, you can have a lot. So street sweeping is one. Trees help a little bit, but they don't really give you that big number. The biggest one is stream bank restorations. That reduces a lot of sediment. So we have 3 stream bank restorations that are currently in design, and next year, hopefully they'll be implemented, bid out. Those 3 will actually get over the 536,000 pounds per year. So it's pretty amazing. And then I also want to add in there another plan that we put in place that's not in the PRP is litter traps. A lot of plastics, a lot of litter that goes into the streams. So we currently have 4. We just actually put in 2 this past year in Garrison Run. So there's 2 active in Garrison Run. There's 1 in Mill Creek, and then there's 1 in Cascade Creek, and the city maintains all 4 of those.
Where's the Cascade Creek one?
It's right over by Green Garden. So it's Green Garden and 12th. Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's-
They're working, there's a lot of knotweed that collects in them, but there's a lot of garbage. We've already filled up a dumpster, so, and they've only been there for a few months, so there's a lot of garbage going in.
So the Cascade Creek one is north of 12th Street, or no?
South.
It's south.
South?
Yep,
You wouldn't know it's there unless you know it's there.
right.
It's
It's hidden, it's
It's
very
hidden.
hidden.
There's a lot
There's a
of-
small opening, and that's where it is,
I'll have to-
and then it closes back up. But, down the line, maybe putting another one at the end would be great, because it opens back up.
There's a fence around it, so if you're driving on 12th, like heading toward, I don't know, heading west, like there's a random driveway that you would go down and it's fenced. But, I mean, you wouldn't know it's there unless you know it's there.
Ed
Never
Kissel actually goes every now and then and gives me, we monitor it, but if there's a big storm, he'll go down there, give me a call, and we'll get it cleaned out.
It overflows there quite a bit.
It does, yeah, there's a lot of surging over at Cascade, so.
So you get a lot of trash on
Next one, Jackie. Okay, and then the next slide, the last slide, monitoring and program evaluation. So in 2024, we actually started a new thing, and we started sampling our frequent flowers. So we have 16 frequent flowers in the city. We have 36 outfalls in total. So the 16 are continuously flowing, and we started actually sampling. So we're sampling for pH, chlorine, total suspended solids, total dissolved solids, BOD, fecal coliform, phosphorus, conductivity, and nitrate. So these are the main that we're testing for. We have the results. We're going to test again in 2025. And go ahead.
So are you continuously monitoring these, or you collect samples?
So with our NEPTES permit, we have to, I inspect multiple times throughout the year, but minimum is once, and we take one sample. That's not a requirement, it's a recommendation.
Okay,
I
so you're
wanted
just,
to-
at your 16 locations, you're taking one sample and running these things?
One
Correct.
sample a year?
One sample a year. The goal is to do more, but there's only a couple of us, and we want to
Yeah.
at least get a baseline. So
Yeah.
we're sampling the same time frame in the year. So we're going to get a baseline and compare these 2 years of data and see if we have any problem areas or hotspots, and then take it from there.
Is the sampling done in the storm sewer or in the stream that it is?
That's a good question. So we're doing the 16 samples at the outfall location, so the last location before it enters the bay.
Okay,
Yep.
so they're all down along the bay?
Yeah.
All along the bay.
Okay.
Yep. And I have in the past, if we had illicit discharge, I do sample upstream, and then our lab is certified, so I take it to, I work really, really closely with our wastewater lab, and they actually run all the samples for me. So we
Oh, the
work,
wastewater lab at the,
yep, so we work very closely together. And then the last thing I want to talk about is we actually just had a 2024 audit through the DEP for our NEPTES, and there was no violations. So yeah, that's huge. I mean, we had an audit 5 years ago. There was violations, so we fixed everything from that audit, and we have none now. So just wanted to share that point out with you.
do you get a raise for that? Sorry.
I don't know, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
I always try to get Sarah Peelman a raise too. I just figured I would just keep going every time we have somebody come in.
Thank you. No. So I know that was a very quick rundown of our MS4 program. There's a lot involved. I just wanted to give the gist to you. If you have any questions, please let me know.
What about runoff from huge dumpsters? Is that,
That, it can definitely be, if there is a visual evidence of runoff from the dumpster, that's definitely illicit discharge.
I walk a lot in the city because I live on 9th and Parade, and what do we call it now, Erie Insurance Arena, those huge dumpsters on Holland Street. Lots of times they smell horrible, but lots of times there's all kinds of stuff running out the bottom.
That's something to report, and
Okay.
I would take care of that, because if you can visually see it and there's a scent, it's illicit discharge. So there's, there no questions. I could definitely get into that.
Eric, when there is illicit discharge like that, for instance, is there any, obviously they have to rectify the situation, but what happens with enforcement? Where does that all come into play?
So we have the right to enforce it and write fines. The main thing is to get them to
Comply.
resolve the issue. Yeah, comply. We don't, we want to work with everybody. Not everyone is well aware of the situation. So educating them first and then having them comply is the main purpose. And a lot of people comply, and then they resolve it. And then if it happens again, then we could move on. I always write a notice of violation when there's an illicit discharge, so I have it on record. And then if there's another one, then we can enforce it. But I have not had to write any fines yet. So
That
everybody has been pretty compliant.
That chronic seepage problem we have on, I forget the name of that old company on Green Garden and 12th.
Yep.
So you guys have sampled the sediment, or?
We didn't sample that because we know what it was. It was their wastewater process backing up, and the DEP took that one over. So every illicit discharge, I have to report to the DEP. They actually had to improve their wastewater process. And then the DEP informs me what requirements that they put into
Because
place.
it's still happening. No, I don't mean the business. I mean at 12th, what's it, Lord? No, what's the name of the?
Lord?
Yeah, it was
Lord, the old Lord property.
Mhm.
There's always seepage coming out of the banks on Green Garden.
Oh, the water, okay. That's not illicit discharge, it's groundwater that's seeping through the hill.
Even
That
though-
is something, there is a development that's going in there, and that is something that they are going to, because they don't want that, it's a liability for them with the sidewalks. So that is something that we're having them look into and study.
I want to mention one thing that Eric did that is outstanding is along the Lakeside Cemetery, there was going to be a project, and I went there once and I thought, what the heck are we doing anything here for? And Eric apparently thought the same thing, and he moved the project to somewhere more suitable. And I just want to commend you for that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, we had one stream bank restoration that was going to be put in at Cemetery Run over right on the bayfront, or on the waterway in the bay, but there was no sediment reduction that would have occurred with that, so we changed the location. So now we're getting around 300,000 pounds with the new location, so.
Just one other quick question. How much of what the farming, how much of that impacts the stormwater here in the city? Do we take that into account in terms of the phosphates and nitrates, and the way that the water flows into our water, into the lake, essentially? So
we have three main areas that drain from Mill Creek in the city. There's not a whole lot of farmland in that area, but it's Mill Creek to Garrison, and then Cemetery flows from that as well. But there's not a whole lot of nitrates and phosphates in the water, believe it or not, with the testing that we've been doing. In other areas, it's a big concern, but we're so urbanized, there's not a whole lot of that going on.
Meaning like maybe Northeast
Northeast,
has a lot of
yeah,
issues with impaired tributaries and that type of thing,
I would imagine that they have a lot of nitrates and phosphates from the farm. Yep.
especially since they till to their end of
Yes.
their properties.
Yeah, but with us, it's not a huge concern.
Lawn chemicals could be an issue.
That's what I was
Yeah.
going to ask,
Like
was
for
about
people,
lawn
yeah. And
chemicals.
so that is something that this group could also look at is,
Right.
and other communities have done that, have imposed ordinances within cities on, how often you can fertilize. If you can fertilize, how often, when, like being aware of, is it going to rain tomorrow or later today? Maybe don't apply your fertilizer and have it run off directly into the storm drains.
And if you could follow the directions instead of using 2 or 3 times much because you think it's better.
My lawn will be greener.
Yes.
So you don't have because you're only doing it once a year, you don't know if we're getting a spike from when people are salting and things like that?
I do not know.
Plua has data on salt in 5 streams.
Yes.
So,
7 Mile, well, that's outside of the city.
so the more urban, and a surprise to nobody, the more urban the stream, the more salt.
Yeah, we see big
What?
spikes in the winter.
Yeah, so we see
I'm
spikes
sure we're going to see really big spikes this
this
winter.
winter.
People
yeah.
are pretty
It's more
generous
wonderful.
with the salt that they put out.
Yeah.
And they don't sweep it up afterwards if it's still there.
No.
Anyone have any other questions with the MS4 program?
I've got a geeky one. Do you sample during dry weather? Because I'm surprised you haven't detected coliform.
So we have to sample during dry weather. It's
Okay.
48 hours after the last rain event
All right.
is when we have to do the sampling. And there is coliform in the samples. So this year, we're going to try to compare that number and see if it has decreased. Back in the day, there was illegal connections. Most of them are gone, but every now and then you'll find a couple. So that's the goal, is to eliminate everything we possibly can.
I was thinking about coliforms from dog doo-doo washing into storm drains and.
That's another, yeah, and that could be what the coliform's from.
Yeah.
I've actually had to call sewers a couple times because you walk by corner catch basins and they're full of bags. People do that in
Yeah.
the city. So if you
look,
see
I put
it,
it in
call
a
it in.
bag.
Yeah,
Put it in the
they
bag
put it
and
in
then
a
throw it in
bag
the
and then
storm
throw it
drain,
in there.
sure.
So that's illicit discharge as well. So you can call that in if you see it.
So, as you know, one of the other things I call you about is plugged drains. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So our sewer crew does maintain the drains and the inlets. So if there are clogged drains, you can file a CRC, and I'll get it on the list, and we'll get it cleaned out. It's not a resident's responsibility to clean out the drains. It's ours, so definitely report those in.
People are watching, by the way, so it doesn't hurt to hear this stuff, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions, comments?
I would ask one, if I may, about
Sure.
rock salt. As we mentioned, there's interest at Mercyhurst in remediating or eliminating some part of our rock salt. Is there any technologies that exist to kind of try to keep that out of drains in general?
Rock salt?
Yeah.
I mean, you can put in, just to prevent it from even entering the drain? Is that your question?
Theoretically.
Not really. You can prevent it from going down the sewer by putting bags. You could put inlet bags around campus, and then you can clean those out.
Okay.
So that's a good example. That's what they use for, it's an ENS control. You put it in the inlets, and then you can remove it, and then the rock salt won't actually enter the sewer system. So it's a good example.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Salt brine is a good application I can give you the report that we did at Barron, which they will never take use of. But nevertheless, if you apply salt brine, you can dramatically decrease the amount of rock salt that you have. But you have to do it in advance of a storm. So before you get a storm, you apply the salt brine, and then you don't have to use as much rock salt. Quite dramatic, that like 40% reduction. So
Is that for roadways and sidewalks, or just roadways?
we did it for campus wide, was our assessment. I'll share it with you, Mary.
I'd be
Collins.
interested.
So
Thank you.
You put it on sidewalks?
Yeah, you put it on sidewalks and roadways, parking lots, and it's a way of decreasing.
So
It's
when
a
I hear the word
pre-treatment.
brine, I think liquid.
Yeah, that's why I said salt brine. It's basically salt water. You just, and so you can, if you get the right equipment, you can mix it in-house instead of buying it.
Excellent.
If you go to buy it, it's way too expensive. But if you make it in-house
And
and
it
then you
doesn't-
apply it, so
It
you,
doesn't freeze?
no, it's
Salt.
salt, yeah. So it's just diluted already, and then you apply it as a precursor. So you'll still end up using some rock salt, but dramatically decrease your usage.
Interesting.
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
Yep. All right. Well, I don't think there's any other questions or comments. So I want to thank you very much for a very informative presentation, Eric. Thank you so much. All right. On to the next item, EAC bylaws.
Oh, I didn't. I thought we were done.
And could I ask people, please, to speak into the mic? The volume in this room is terrible, and when you can't hear anyways,
Right.
I agree. But I'm sorry if I didn't do it.
I can always hear you.
All right. Any comments on the bylaws?
I was wondering if on page 2, Article 5.1, we could change the EAC shall select to the EAC may select.
That was also my comment.
page 2, Article 5.1, and change the word shall to may, so it'll read, to encourage community interest and provide broader input, comma, the EAC may select up to 7 associate members. Which just allows for the fact that we may not always have 7
Right.
associate members,
Yeah,
but
I
we
agree.
can have 7.
Where are
There's
you?
a very strong, or shall is a very strong.
Very
Yep.
strong.
I think that's appropriate.
Page 2,
Right, right.
Article 5.1,
Oh, point.
under associate non-voting members, the very first point, to encourage community interest and provide broader input, the EAC may select up to 7 associate
That
members.
makes sense.
This was something I've been thinking in regards to the high school students. I know we say a 1-year commitment. We may want to say a summer commitment for high school, because otherwise I don't think we're going to have any high school students involved in the EAC.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
Okay, so we have a requirement that you have to be able to.
Oh, you're talking about the 1-year commitment?
Yeah, the 1-year
I don't
commitment.
think the 1-year commitment is the issue. I think the time of the meeting.
Well,
is the
unfortunately,
issue.
there's either the school's going to have to let out earlier, or we're going to have a later meeting, and I don't think either one of those is a possible solution, unfortunately. So I think with the high school students, it may just be better to have a 3-month commitment, from June to August. So at least
Oh,
then
I see
they're-
what you're saying.
Yeah, so then they're able to attend during the summer and at least be able to interact with their group then.
Wasn't there some talk about that somebody might be able to get some kind of study kind of a thing and be able to come based on that it was part of a,
I'm not aware.
I don't know.
somebody brought that up last time.
So you would amend the language to say at least a 1-year commitment to attend meetings with the exception of high school students?
Something like that, yeah. And that was just something that popped into my head right now, so I didn't have any, you know what I mean? I didn't have it fleshed out, but.
Yeah, I'm just saying, because we have to have the language in order to approve it. So would the language be that we would amend that point 3 under Article 5
At least 1 year.
from to at least a 1-year commitment to attend meetings, and then put in with the exception of high school students,
For a 3-month commitment.
where a 3-month commitment would be
Mhm.
sufficient.
Yes, that sounds good.
Would that work?
I would add also for college students, they're not here in the summer usually if they're from out of state or from out of Erie. So a lot of my students said, I can do it for a couple, but I'd be gone in June.
We're hoping we get local
I mean, it's-
people.
I'm wondering if that's something that we can do as a group, year by year, rather than trying to put all the prescriptions in the bylaws.
So then we just change the language to, and their agreement to attend meetings, and we leave it indiscriminate as to how long?
That's, yeah, I mean, if we're gonna start adding more and more, it might just be simpler to take out the 1-year commitment.
We
What if you
just-
change it to agreement to?
Attend as many meetings as possible.
Or attend, or something about commitment to attend meetings as directed by the EAC? And then we can adjust it accordingly?
Is
Thoughts
it-
from our associate members?
I would also add with the university students, their schedules change, fall and spring. So if one student could theoretically make the 3:00 Wednesdays in the fall, then, it could get tricky if their schedule changes. So that sounds flexible enough that students would like it. No?
I was able to make it work.
I'm-
But I know it's different for everybody, but if I went into this with my semester schedule, and I also live here though, I don't go home, I go home.
Yeah.
So
Here is home.
here is home. So I do think it's a good idea. I just, that was only my thought, is if it's once a month and you plan, if you commit ahead of time and can schedule ahead of time, might not be as large of a concern. But,
I mean,
So, agreement to attend meetings as determined by this? It just seems like, so what are they writing in their letter? I promise to
Yeah.
attend meetings.
I tend to say that we should just keep it as it is, but know that as a body, we can talk to the individuals and look at their schedules and maybe make exceptions. I mean, we do that anyways
But
for
the-
members. I mean,
We
you know, we're not
publicized
supposed to miss a
But if-
meeting, but if we have an excuse, we can miss a meeting.
the letter that you and I wrote together, it does require a one-year commitment. So we could adjust that and repost it, but then it wouldn't be in line with the bylaws, I guess. So
I would not, what I'm saying is I wouldn't change it, I would leave it and then just deal with it on an individual basis.
But wouldn't that deter people from not
Yes.
even applying? So I would be hesitant. If we are going to be amendable and flexible, then we should be upfront, so, because we might attract more people that way. You know, one of the other things, we could work on this language. You don't have to vote on the
No,
bylaws
we can't vote
today.
today.
So we could work on, I could submit it out to you, put in some language that I've heard here today, and then submit it out to the board, and then you can vote on the draft next time.
Yeah, that makes
Amendments
sense,
next
instead
time.
of trying to hammer out something
Yeah.
that
Right.
I don't think we're
I
all
have a-
prepared for. But with that, any other amendments to the bylaws?
I would just say, because we have a member who, we may, speculative still, but may have a leave of absence for a few months. I don't know if that's something, and I can look at this, but if it's something that we want to allow, or, you know,
To have a little bit more clear language on something like that?
yeah, because I
Yeah.
guess it would, you know, I did receive notification of it, but it was only to me. So maybe there's a way that we can formalize that, so that if there's a board member who is going, or a associate voting member, non-voting member, that if there's a leave of absence, that needs to maybe be voted upon, possibly. I could put that into the bylaws, and you guys can take a look, and,
Yeah, if you could send us some language, I think
yeah.
that would be
Yeah, and it'd
good.
be, especially, you know, if the person has a very regular attendance record versus, you know, somebody who's being absent, excused or not, but 3 on top of a lot of excused absences would be.
Sure.
Do we know when does Aaron's appointment?
I know
I
don't
you're
want
on-
to, I don't want to give any, I'll find out, and I'll ask Aaron maybe to email all of you, so that the story comes from the
Yeah,
source, because
'cause-
I didn't receive confirmation on what the full details were.
Right, because Sam's on the agenda for tonight to be renewed.
And I have another question. Was everybody reappointed whose terms ran out?
No, not
I
yet.
think it's tonight.
Yeah.
No, well, you're the only,
Well,
only,
Yeah, I
Sam-
am too.
Sam was Sam is on agenda. Matt does not have to, I just found this out and learned something. You are a mayoral appointment, so you don't have to be on agenda. So,
That's correct.
well, they better reappoint him since he's the chair.
the mayor's already agreed to reappoint, yes. And then Jasmine reappointed and
Well,
put it on the agenda
she's
for
on the
today,
agenda.
yeah.
I will say regarding Aaron's situation, it does say that we may notify, who are absent without reasonable cause. I think that's reasonable cause to be
Yeah.
absent for 3 meetings.
Yeah, as long as he wasn't also
Necessarily know if we
absent
need
for
to actually
3 other
amend
ones.
Amend
it.
it.
I mean, we can always, I guess if you want to look at something, we can, but I think the bylaws allow us enough flexibility to
We
avoid
could also
any-
put in some I mean, you could get really restrictive and just say, if it's going to be more than 6 months, let's say, then the board has the ability to vote whether or not to allow for that leave of absence.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
what I
could
was
do
going to say. If
something
it
like
happens
that.
for one semester, okay, but then if it happens the very next semester too, then it's time to.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would
Appoint
think
some-
if that
reappoint
comes up,
somebody.
the person would probably resign.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
At least in good faith, as
Sure.
I would think, but I don't know.
I think some language in there that allows, because I don't really feel like the language in there, so I wouldn't mind seeing some language that allows us a little bit more, I don't know. I don't, the way I read it, we didn't really have any ability to say, to do anything about Aaron not, and which is not to say I want to do something, I want to be really clear. I was just like, oh, this is a new situation, and so it makes you read the bylaws in a different way. And does it allow us the flexibility where if somebody is continually doing this, do we have the flexibility to say, you can't be a part of this anymore because you're not here? I mean, as it stands, we have 6 voting members. If we were able to vote on anything, that's really awkward, right? The whole point of having an odd number is that no matter what, somebody wins or, a vote is cast. So I just think some language that allows us a little bit more control, I think, is warranted.
Yeah, and I didn't also want it to seem that I was like saying to vote Aaron out. I was just saying that,
I know what you're putting down.
he notified me, and I wanted to make it clear to the board, but I'll certainly ask him to be more clear and give more details on what his schedule is like for the next couple months.
Yeah, that would be good.
No, it sounds good. Thank you. Any other amendments? Proposed amendments, I should say. All right, sounds good. Moving on is the associate non-voting member, and I just had that, I believe, Sam is her name?
Sarah
Sarah, I'm sorry. Sarah
Wedkin. Yeah.
I read through, I don't have any
You look great.
issues.
Yeah, I was gonna, given the time, because I can see the clock behind you, I was gonna move that we approve her as a
Second.
as an associate.
You got a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We will welcome Sarah Wedekin to the associate EAC membership.
Yay.
All right. The next item is the EAC annual report. I don't know if anyone read the enabling legislation, Act 148 for the Environmental Advisory Council as put out by the state. It specifically says we need an annual report, so we probably should do something. I'm not quite sure how intensive of an annual report last year will be, because I know we were just starting to get everything moving along, so it might be pretty,
Sure.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's a good, we need to do it, we have to do it, we're required to do it. I'm going to look at a little bit, I'm now in charge of the Planning Commission, so they have an annual report that they usually approve like in March, which I know seems a little
March
bit.
1st.
March 1st, yeah, so, which seems a little bit far, like, far out from the year, but I don't think we have to go out that far. But even if we put I'll put something together, even if it's just our priorities, what we've done over the past year, what we've talked about, what we've accomplished. I mean, it can be just simply bullets at this point, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And then
Highlight
maybe
the
be more in depth.
That's what I would recommend when I do the annual report for the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
I'm always like, here's what we did, plan
Right.
development, subdivision, blah, blah, blah. So it could be like, here was our priorities, we have several speakers,
Sure, okay.
yeah. So
Okay, that
I
sounds
can
good.
help you, you know what I mean, I don't want you to have to do it all yourself. So.
Okay, thank you.
I'll volunteer to help too.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, awesome. Any other comments on the annual report? Hearing none, we'll move to adjourn. All right, do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we got 2 seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.